Good morning. Yes, well, yesterday we were looking at the historical situation that Isaiah and Hezekiah found themselves in. And we ended up yesterday with Isaiah coming to the king and saying to him quite simply about the emissaries which had visited from Babylon. And Hezekiah said, well, they come from a place a long way off, they can't trouble us very much. And Isaiah said to him, well, what did you show them? And he said, well, I showed them everything. I showed them everything we've got. And Isaiah said, they'll be back. They'll be back. They just come to look at the land and see exactly what the situation is. They'll be reporting back, and sooner or later, this little country of Judah is going to be troubled by the great empire of Babylon. Well, Hezekiah died, and Isaiah was still alive. Manasseh took over from Hezekiah, a very bad king. A king who tried to insist on putting in pagan temples, right into the very pagan altars, right into the temple itself. He wanted to make all sorts of changes to the religion and to the people as they worship God. But Isaiah was now dead. Hezekiah was gone. And the time passes. One kingdom takes over after another. But the strange thing about Isaiah is that he foresees things happening in the future with great clarity. And this is something I think we have to get hold of, the clarity with which he sees it. For though Babylon at this particular moment of time was not a great empire, he saw it developing into a great empire alongside Assyria and Egypt. And he saw that in the future, Judah itself would be troubled by Babylon. In the same way as Assyria had troubled the north, he has saw quite clearly that Babylon would trouble Judah. But remember the name of his first son, a remnant will return. Isaiah points out quite simply in his writings that although Assyria invaded the northern kingdom of Israel and took away all their people to different places, brought back the others who had become Samaritans. When Nebuchadnezzar attacked Judah, he too would take people away, and he too would be used by God as a means of disciplining his people. But as far as this southern kingdom is concerned, his name of his son was a remnant will return. He proclaims this quite clearly, that although they'll be taken away, in time a remnant will return. As we go through the book of the prophet Isaiah, and we will be coming back to it, I know where we finished off, and we will be looking at the chapters following that. I just want for a moment today just to look forward in time and see what it is that Isaiah saw and what it is that he foresaw. Remember his position again. He is about the year 700 or something. Within 100 years, Jeremiah had come, another prophet, who picks up on the prophecies of Isaiah and warns the people again, because what they're doing, he says, Nebuchadnezzar from Babylon is going to come, and he will discipline you in the same way as Assyria disciplined the northern kingdom. But the people don't really worry about it too much. They don't want to listen to the prophecies. They don't want to take them to heart. They put them aside. They're too busy living their own lives and doing it their own way. But then this great empire of Babylon starts to rise up. Looking at it from an historical point of view, you can find out quite simply that Nebuchadnezzar saw Judah again as a sort of buffer state against Egypt in the south and Assyria in the north. And he wants to make sure that this little buffer state is under his control. But the Jewish people have always been a difficult people to control. But finally he turns his attention against Jerusalem and marches against Jerusalem. Jeremiah warns about his coming. He knows about it primarily because Isaiah had foreseen it. And he says, this king Nebuchadnezzar is going to do this. He's going to take these people away. And sure enough, he came, and sure enough, he conquered the city. And as had been prophesied, he took a large number of the ruling families away to Babylon, where he settled them down. When they arrive in Babylon, they write back to Jeremiah, who's been left in Israel, and they said, our prophets are telling us that we're only here for a short period of time, and then we'll come back. But Jeremiah says to them simply, no, you will be there. You'll be there for about 70 years. Then you will be allowed to return. Oh yes, a remnant will return. But you see, after 70 years, the people had settled down. They'd built their houses, they had their businesses, they had their families. So when finally they're allowed to return, only about 50,000 do, under the leadership of Ezra. But all of this was foreseen by Isaiah hundreds of years before it happened. And remember as well, when we're reading Isaiah, when he sees the birth of Jesus, a child will be given to us, and the life of Jesus, it's about 700 years before this happens. But as well as this, Isaiah sees Babylon in a different way to what we see it. And we're going to be dealing with this tomorrow. Amen.